The House of Mystery presents Inside Writing, the radio show where authors discuss their writing process in all genres.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery, and I'm Al Warren. I am called the, what was I called on the last show there? Can't remember. Oh, it was a noodle whore. I'm the noodle whore. All the way from the west. And from the east, we have the great David North Martini.
Oh.
Well, you know, somebody
no
has to have the drinks. So,
that's right.
Breaking the rules already. I'm being mean. Well, we've got another great show lined up for you to finish off the week. We've got a writer today, and her latest book is Viper's Nest of Lies. Ooh, that sounds exciting. And so our author is the writer, Daniella Bernett. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Hopefully you're happy at the end of the show. We never know. Well, this sounds like quite the mystery here, quite the, what kind of writing would you classify this?
All of my books are a cross between mysteries and thrillers. I wouldn't categorize them as cozy. So they also have a lot of spy aspects to them and thefts of jewels. So lots going on in all the books.
Well, that's kind of an interesting area. So what draws you to write about these kind of heists or spies or these kind of thrillers, I guess, you know, jewel thieves and stuff? What led you to that kind of category?
Well, I've been an avid reader since I was a little kid, and my mother got my sister and me hooked on mysteries and thrillers when we were very young, so I like that genre. And also in terms of movies, the same thing, spy thrillers, World War II thrillers, those all appeal to me. So when I sat down to write my own books, that's what I wanted to write. And my two protagonists are Emmeline Kirby, who's a journalist, and her husband, who is Gregory Longdon, who is a quote-unquote former jewel thief because now he has a legitimate job as an insurance investigator. But he hasn't given up the thrill of the game yet, and he still steals jewels. So that adds another dynamic. But she doesn't know, so we're not going to tell her that, otherwise she's going to kill him.
We got murder in here already. Well,
what's life without some murder?
Well, this is true. Certainly, there's a lot of it that goes around. Well, when you do this, okay, so this is you call it a Emmeline Kirby and Gregory Longdon mystery. So is this kind of part of a series, and this going to be part of a longer series?
This is a series. Viper's Nest of Lies is book 7 in the series.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize. So book 7. So when you're writing a series like that, have you outlined all of the books ahead of time, and you kind of know where you're going to go with these two, or is this something that just sort of happens as is per book?
No, I don't outline, but I do like to plot my stories out before I start writing. So at least I have that basic skeleton of the plot to follow. You know, I may get a great idea along the way, and I add that in, but at least I know I know who the killer is from the outset, so I know how to proceed with the story and plot the red herrings as well, because those are important. But I wanted to write a series from the beginning, so I knew my two characters, so I would develop little things in each book. So I would put something in book 1, leave a little nugget, develop it a little bit more in book 2, because I knew how I wanted to proceed later on. When I wrote book 1, Lead Me Into Danger, I had the idea for the first few books in my head before I even started writing that one, because I was thinking in terms of a series, and I wanted my characters to grow and evolve as each book progressed.
when you're writing a series, when you've got a couple of characters like this, how is it that you keep track of what they go through? Because when you get into book 7, how they act and react to different things and what they're and the development of them, you have to be very careful about that, right? That you don't miss something or forget something or something has to change. Do you have a pattern of doing that, or?
Well, actually, it's all in my head. I remember, because as I said, from the beginning, I knew what I wanted each of them to go through emotionally, in terms of growing as a character and evolving more, their interactions with each other, in terms of clashes and just in terms of common ground. That was all very important to me. So it's all in my head.
Oh, well, then you must have a close relationship. What is your relationship with these two characters?
Oh, they're part of me. I mean, I think any author will tell you that your characters are a bit of yourself in some way. Or maybe it's like you wanted to how you wanted to react in a certain situation, so you get a second chance to do that when you're writing a character. Or in terms of Emmeline, I admire her greatly because she's very sure of herself, which I'm not. I'm very self-conscious. The only thing is she's reckless. But all of us have our foibles and our admirable qualities, and I wanted to instill that in each of them because that's just the way people are in real life. That's human nature. So everybody is not all good or all bad. We all have our faults and good qualities. So I wanted to portray that in the books in my characters.
Well, that's interesting. So when you are putting yourself in the character, how much are you willing to expose about yourself? Like, because when you do that and people read it, they're learning something about you as well.
Okay, well, I'm not going to tell you deep, dark secrets. The only thing that Emmeline and I share is that she has a short temper and she's impatient, and that's exactly me. In terms of anything else, I'm not going to divulge my secrets.
Well, are you drawing from... I know you have a journalism degree.
Yes.
I'm assuming you weren't a jewel thief.
No, I'm not. But it's the it's the thrill of that. A jewel thief is a criminal. That's granted because that's a crime. But it's not like a murderer or a serial killer or a bomber. So it's a thief. But Gregory, for example, he's a thief. He's a gentleman, and like Emmeline, he has a certain code of honor, and they both think murder is taboo, and the culprit should pay for the crime. So maybe it's a little bit like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief, the gentle thief.
And the location that you have these in, I understand it's European pretty much. It's UK based.
Yes.
Do you find that you have to go to the locations to get a feel? Is that important to you?
Well, a lot of people have asked me that. I don't. I love to travel, and I love learning new things when I travel. But I don't travel to do my research. It's more that when I am somewhere, a place has made a certain impression on me, and that sparks an idea in my head. I mean, oftentimes I'm somewhere and I think, oh, this is a good place to find a dead body. But in terms of location is, in terms of setting, is very important to me. It's like another character, and it helps me. I think it helps to propel the plot, and it sets a certain mood. Both of my characters, Emmeline and Gregory, they're British, and the books take place in the UK and in Europe. I mean, they live in London, but the books have taken place in other parts of the UK and in Europe. Like this new book, Viper's Nest of Lies, is set in London and Malta. So that's in terms of setting. Setting is very important to me in my books, and I want to transmit to my readers, and I hope that I am. For them to get a feel of the places I've seen, like they're walking in my shadow, with how I describe the setting in the books.
So is your setting or your location actually a character in itself?
It is. I think so. I think it's important because different areas propel different ideas in my head, and like certain places like would be good for a jewel theft. Another place would be good for Emmeline and Gregory to hopefully have a vacation, but they never seem to be able to do that because they always wind up getting involved in some tangled web.
Now, I'm wondering how you kind of internally process these characters. Do you have an inner monologue? Can you hear the characters in your head? Do you see more images and symbols when you're translating this to the page?
Dialogue, I can often hear them in my head, and you're going to laugh, but oftentimes I wake up in the middle of the night because I think of a good line of dialogue. So get up and write it down quickly. Otherwise, if I wait till morning, it'll go poof into the atmosphere.
It vanishes, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you consider these characters to you? Like when I talk to a lot of writers that do fiction, they will say, like, they compare them as their kids. It's like my kids. It's like my families. It's like, what do you classify them as?
No, I think that to a certain extent, that's right. That your family or friends, because I know instinctively how each of them would react in a certain situation, or how they would react to one another because of their temperaments. I know how they would react. So yeah, if you're a family or a friend, a close friend, you know that because you know the person. They're like I said before, characters are a part of each author. Except for in my case, I'm not one. So you can keep that in mind.
Well, I was wondering too, I know you plot out these stories at least to a certain extent, but has a character ever done anything to surprise you? Have they just kind of gone off the rails and decided they were just going to do what they wanted to do and against what you really wanted them to do within the story?
Not really. I have total control.
That's perfect.
I have total control.
Well, that's really kind of where do you get your extra characters, like the characters that surround these two main protagonists? Like, are they from people you've met somewhere, or you've seen in a coffee shop, or where do you sort of get these other characters?
Well, in terms of when I wrote the series, I wanted to have amateur sleuths as the protagonists because there are a lot of series out there, great series with the police detective as the main character. However, the law puts certain constraints on a police officer. With amateur sleuths, they're also investigating a crime, but they have more leeway, more flexibility. So in my books, I have Gregory and Emmeline on the one side of the amateur sleuth. And then on the other side, I have Superintendent Oliver Burnell and Sergeant Finch of Scotland Yard. And also Philip Acheson of the Foreign Office, who purportedly he works for the Foreign Office, but he's really an MI5 agent. So I balance out the gravitas of the law with the amateur sleuth, and I have them mix with one another towards, they come from different directions and ultimately to solve the crime.
So is there some sort of a theme that you've got running through this, or maybe underlying in the story?
Well, a theme that I tend to go back to a lot because it's very exciting is Russian spies and espionage. And of course, because we have Gregory, we have to keep his attention. We have thefts of diamonds, a ruby necklace in another book. So, we have to keep Gregory excited as well.
What's your influence on this type of writing? Where do you draw from?
Various, newspaper articles, World War II spy stories, real stories, movies, and lots of things influence me. But I've always liked that genre. It's the intrigue that gets me. You know, for me, the mysteries have always been about the puzzle. You know, I don't need to know how many blood and guts were spilled everywhere. It's like why the crime was committed. That's what's important to me. And then how does the sleuth or sleuths get to that point to solve that crime, because the reader has to have an answer somehow. You can't leave the reader hanging.
Yeah, it's important. So I wonder, so where did it all start for you? How did you decide that you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, it started when I was 9 years old in fourth grade. My fourth grade teacher, she had creative writing hour once a week, and she gave us different assignments. And I just loved it. I was like, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So then I studied journalism when I was in college because that was the natural progression for me. I never was a journalist, but in my field, I was the editor of the paper, a newsletter for a trade organization I work for, or writing articles for my firm. So I always was writing somehow. I never practiced as a journalist, though.
What was the catalyst that made you actually decide that you felt like you were good enough to publish something?
Okay, well, writing is like breathing. I just have to do it. So in the 4 months, when I graduated from college, in the 4 months before I found my first job, I wrote a mystery novel. And my first job was at Penguin USA, the publisher. And then when I was at Penguin, one day I got up the courage and I approached one of the editors there about my marriage. And she was very nice. She actually read the manuscript and she told me it was better than what she saw from a lot of first-time writers, but I had to think more in terms of a series. So I tried revising that book, and it just didn't work out, and I chalked it up to a good exercise. And then slowly, I kept thinking about a series, and like in the back of my mind, the kernel for Emmeline and Gregory started to formulate in the back of my mind until one day I said, here I am, I'm ready, and I started writing Lead Me Into Danger, the first book in the series.
So where do you plan on going with this? Like with this series, like do you know how many books you're going to do with these two?
No, I don't. A lot of people have asked me that. No, I don't know how many books. I'm going for right now. Emmeline and Gregory still have a hold on me, so I still have lots of ideas percolating in the back of my mind. But I will continue with them until I can't think of any more trouble to involve them in, but at this stage, I'm not sure how many books there will be in the series. I'm just finishing book 8, I have to start on book 9, so that's where things stand at the moment.
So when you look back at your first writing of this series and others like it, I wonder, do you ever look back and think, oh, I wished I would have wrote it differently, like change this or do this, or do you do that as a writer?
Not in terms of the plot, but, maybe like in terms of the language, I think to myself, maybe I could have refined that a little bit more, but not in terms of the plot, because as I mentioned before, I knew how I wanted the series to proceed in each book when I sat down to write that first word in book 1.
Did you ever want to explore any other types of writing?
Well, maybe, when Emmeline and Gregory finally let go of their hold on me, maybe I'll think of in terms of, I've always liked historical fiction, so maybe I'll do a historical fiction, a mystery series, maybe set in World War II. That's a period that intrigues me, or the Victorian era. Those are possibilities. Maybe I might spin off something, one of the characters from this series, but those are still like fuzzy in the back of my mind now because I'm focusing on Emmeline and Gregory.
Yeah, it's an interesting when you've got that sort of hold or connection with your characters. Yeah, it's just, I guess that doesn't leave you a lot of places to go. So if someone's never read anything from you
Yes.
before. They've never heard of you before.
Yes.
What would you say is the one book that they should get to kind of get to know you?
Well, each of my books, they can, even though they're part of the series, they can stand alone because I put backstory in the book so that if somebody's picking up book 4 and they haven't read the others, they will be able to follow along just fine. But if readers, I suggest if readers want to see how Emmeline and Gregory developed, then to start with book 1, Lead Me Into Danger. But in terms of which book is, we shouldn't have, as authors, we shouldn't have favorites. But in terms of which one is my favorite is When Blood Runs Cold, book 5. And I think my second favorite is this new one, Viper's Nest of Lies.
Any other authors out there that you'd like to work with?
Like to work with a lie in terms of living, or I wish I had met them.
Well, probably both are good questions, but
Okay.
I mean, you're probably not going to work with the dead one. But
No, but as anyone will tell you, Agatha Christie is my hero, and I wish I could have met her because I think I would have learned so much. I learned so much by reading her books, but to have met her in person would have been a thrill, to say the least. But in terms of authors nowadays, I do have I've made friends with some mystery authors. But in terms of someone that I would love to work with or meet in person, the British authors Anthony Horowitz or Jeffrey Archer, I would love to meet them because I love their books and they both know how to put twists and turns in there that just leave the reader breathless. So I'd love to meet them in person.
After writing a novel, do you have a way to recharge or relax, or do you just go on to the next book?
I usually take a couple of months off in between each book just to let the next one steep in my mind before I start writing it.
how do I say this now? So, no, I'm thinking. Yeah, of course. But I'm thinking about your characters, and I'm thinking about you and stuff like that. Explain to maybe your listeners or to the listeners, our listeners, what you hope to happen to your characters. Like you've got a close relationship with them in your. Mm-hmm. So do you get to decide? Because you said you had full control, but do you really get to decide where they're going to go, or is it something? Is your more emotion, or is this more brain thought? You know what I'm saying?
Writing has to be a combination of the two. Thinking with your brain, but it has to be emotional too, because in terms of mysteries, a lot of crimes are emotional crimes, jealousy, love, greed, you have to weave that into the story. So it has to be a little bit of both. The emotional side for why the crime was committed, and the analytical side to come to the point to resolve the crime.
Now, and you really like the UK and UK writers, it seems like. Is there, do you think there's a reason for that?
I don't know. I've been an Anglophile since I was very little. I read books about England, watched TV programs. It just, the country, the culture, the landscape just appeals to me. I cannot tell you why, like a lot of things, why someone likes peanut butter as opposed to grape jelly. It's just England. I just have an affinity for the UK.
Oh, it's pretty interesting.Maybe you were there in your past life.
Perhaps I was.
Well,
you know what? It was funny because when I was going to London for the first time, because I had read so much and had seen so many programs, when I got to London, I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I knew where Hyde Park was. I knew what was next to Hyde Park because I had been there before so many times, reading and watching programs and so forth.
That's pretty interesting, Do you find yourself getting into your character situations? So do you kind of play it out in your mind, how they would be and where they go and stuff like that, what they're wearing and all of that? Is that important to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have to do, as a writer, you have to be able to do that to get into their mindset where you're dropping them into a certain situation. You have to be there. It's like, well, Emmeline is going to scream, or Gregory is going to run this way. You have to be in their mindset to be able to direct them in the scene.
Yeah.
React to people or the situation.
Yeah, it's pretty. So, do you do a lot of research on the areas as well, like on the parts? Do you make sure you get everything right, like the details?
Well, a lot of the place I featured in the books, I've been there. If I need to follow up, with a certain detail, I would look that up. But since I've been there, I know. That's why I'm able to describe the places for my readers. So I have that. That gives it a flavor of authenticity to help the story move along.
Yeah. Now, do you like to interact with your readers a lot?
Oh, I love it. I love doing readings. I find it. I love doing the reading itself and then taking questions from readers afterwards. That's why I was so disappointed last year with COVID and so on. I couldn't do my usual reading and so on. I could only go to the store, sign their stack of books. But I love doing the readings and getting people's reactions, about the characters, about the stories, just whatever, if they have any dislikes, which I hope not, and I haven't heard any dislikes from anyone, but I do like interacting with the readers.
Do you read anything or have any influences that might be surprising to fans?
I read almost anything except science fiction and horror, because I don't like that, but pretty much everything, I read historical fiction, mysteries and thrillers, biographies. I'm interested in everything. And I think as an author, you have to be, because you have to broaden your mind to be able to create your own story. And authors in themselves, they're readers at heart, because, for me, I fell in love with the written word. So you have to be a reader and to read many different things to be able to write your own story.
Now, do you have a place that you like readers to come and communicate? Do you have like a website, or are you doing social media? What's the best way to kind of interact?
Well, I have my website. It's daniellaburnett.com, and there's an email address if somebody wants to drop me a little note. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Goodreads, and I'm on BookBub. I don't do Twitter.
Okay, well, Twitter can be up and down.
Yeah, no, I've heard some. Yeah, I don't have the courage for Twitter, but I'm on Facebook. If somebody wants to leave me a note on Facebook, or as I said, on my website, daniellaburnett.com, there's an email address where if somebody wants to send me a note. Right.
We'll have that connected to our website as well, so people can find you. So that's
nice.
Listeners and stuff like that. How did you find COVID for writing and stuff? Do you find when tensions are strong and stressful things are going on around you in the world that do you get lost and escaped in your writing, or do you find that it interferes with writing?
Well, because I was working from home because of the lockdown, I had a bit more time to write, because I didn't have that, hour commute in the morning, hour commute in the evening, so I had more time to write. And writing, it is like breathing, so it was an escape for me, because my father did pass away last year in April, not from COVID, but he did pass away. And I found that writing did help me a bit. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just wondered if, but, when things are going on like that in the world, if it kind of creates a little bit of tension in your writing, or maybe it gets a little darker.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think that's the case, but it does help me in terms, if there is tension out there, it does help me to focus and channel everything within me, that just creating that being able to drop into that fictional world to escape, because my books hopefully are an escape for readers, and they're an escape for me from the real world, all my troubles for the day.
Yeah, no, hopefully it does. Well, it's certainly an interesting conversation with you today, and we appreciate you coming by.
Yes, I've had fun.
And the book we're talking about, of course, is Viper's Nest of Lies.
Yes.
And our guest is the author, Daniella Bernett. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show today.
Thank you. I've had a very enjoyable conversation with the two of you, and I hope to be back again, maybe in the future sometime.
Oh, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniella.
Tired of wasting time trying to decide what to watch on your streaming service? Go to our website and look for the Martino movie reviews.
To find out more about our show, guests, or to listen to past shows from our archive, please go to www.houseofmysteryradio.com.
The mission has been completed.
The end! By George, he's got it! It is the end!
I'll see you.
If you're lying to me, I'll be back.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.